So if you've been taking my advice and practicing 100 hours a day, chances are you've got some great calluses on your fingers, but you may have broken a string. And I remember the first time I broke a string, I had no idea how to fix it. So I'm going to try to show you how to fix it today. I'm going to use the sixth string. I'm not going to break it. I'm just going to take it off because you might want to change them once in a while if they get sweaty or old or rusty too. So this one, I've got a peg winder, which makes it a little bit quicker, but of course you can use your fingers as well. And I'm going to loosen it up. I'll turn it up a little bit so you can hear. Don't normally do this, but it's always fun. There we go. Yeah, good sound. Loosen it so it's super, super loose. And then you can just pull it and unwind it, and it comes right off. The next thing is there's a bead on the end of the string that keeps it attached to the bridge. And so you're going to have to push this through a little bit. Oh, and you know what? I might have to take the back off because it gets stuck on the plastic thing. Oh, no, sorry. I don't have to take the back off. But if you want to, you can. This unscrews and it gives you real easy access to all this. So I managed to get it through without taking it off. And just pull it out, and your string is off. And don't step on the ends because sometimes they're sharp and you don't want to cut your toe. So I'm going to wind that up and get a brand new string. It looks like this. Unwinder. And feed it back through that little hole. You can see, underneath this plastic thing, there's the holes in the bridge itself, and it feeds through pretty easily. Actually, easier than it was getting it out. Just pull it right through there. And one nice thing about guitar strings is the new ones are always going to be, much longer than you need. You don't have to worry about the length. It even makes it to this one, but you only have to make it to the short one in this case. So there's a little hole, so just feed it through that hole. And you want to have a couple of winds around that peg so it holds it good and tight. You sort of get a sense of it. I usually just leave a little bit of slack, and sometimes I'll hold it with my right hand, with my fingers like this, and then I'll use my first finger to sort of hold it down so it's a little bit flat. Start turning it. You want to turn it so, I guess this would be counterclockwise, this guitar. And the reason I'm holding it here is to make enough tension to make a good crimp on the metal. I also pushed up in the string here to get it out of the way. So when it goes all the way around, it will go underneath. When it starts wrapping, it'll go underneath that first wrap. So each time it wraps underneath, not over. And that'll keep solid pressure on the nut. Of course, if you've got one of these string winders, that makes your work a lot faster. And we're going counterclockwise again to tighten it up. Once I feel the pressure on my right hand, I can let it go. And from there, tune it up to pitch. Now the last thing I want to do when I get the new string on is give it a little bit of a stretch. A brand new string always needs to be stretched just a little bit. I go over the 12th fret and just push it down a little bit. The first time that I do this, you can hear it dropped a lot. Each time you do that, it'll be a little bit less of a drop. And by probably the third or fourth time, it'll be all stretched and you'll be ready to go. Yeah. So last but not least, when you're changing a guitar string, you've obviously got a big long thing hanging off there, and that can make noise. It can also poke you in the eye or cause all kinds of trouble. So It's good to have a pair of wire clippers around. Actually, if you don't have the wire clippers, you can just push it back and forth and it'll eventually break through the metal. But just clip it close to the tuning key and boom, nice and clean, ready to rock. So now I want to show you some of the parts of the electric guitar that aren't so obvious, some of the mysterious parts. When I first got an electric guitar, there was a lot of things that I didn't quite understand, and so hopefully I can take some of the mystery out of it. I brought with me a Phillips head screwdriver, and the first thing I want to show you are the pickup height adjustment screws. Obviously you've got 3 pickups, and each one of them you can decide how high it is, off the body and how close to the strings it gets. Why would you want to do that? Why do you want to change it? Basically, if the pickup is closer to the strings, it's going to be a little more high output, a little bit louder, a little more distortion. Although you can't have it too high because then it'll touch the strings and it'll start buzzing and making noise. So you want to get a good balance, and you can just, if you turn it clockwise, it's going to go higher towards the string, and if you turn it counterclockwise, it's going to get lower, further away from the string and quieter. You don't want to go too low because then the screw will come out of the pickup and the pickup will be loose. So be a little bit careful with that. It's easy to fix, but you want to keep it in good shape. The next thing I want to show you is the back of the guitar has a plate that you can usually change strings without taking it off, but sometimes it is easier if you do take it off. And plus I can show you a little bit about how the tremolo works, the whammy bar that is. So I already took a bunch of the screws off, so this is pretty much ready to go. And there, I've slid it off, and look at that thing. How the heck does that work? This is the back of the bridge, and this actually moves. I'll show you in a second. It's got springs, so the springs balance the tension of the strings, springs and strings. So I'm gonna put the whammy bar in, and I'll show you just how it works. So you can see when I move the whammy that this bridge moves. And there you go, it's moving. And you can even hear. And you can see how if you didn't have those springs, the bridge would just fly out of there. So you've got to make sure to keep those springs in there good and tight. And if this is off, it gives you really, really good access to putting the strings in and out of there. So a lot of times it's easier to change the strings that way. If you put in a heavier gauge of strings, it's going to be more tension on the front of the guitar, so you need to screw this in a little more to balance it. But that's something that you might want to have a guitar tech do at your local music store. It's a little bit tricky, but it's certainly not going to break it to mess around with it. So that's what all that does. Let's put it back on. Oh, the input jack. This occasionally, if you play your guitar all the time, or if the temperature changes, like if you bought your guitar in the summer and it changes to winter and it gets cold, sometimes the little nut on this will come loose. Of course, you can tighten it with a tool, or you can set a needle nose pliers. But if it's really loose, sometimes it's good to unscrew all 4 of these screws, pull it out, so you can hold the back side of it. That way it won't get twisted around too much, and it'll keep all the wires inside in good shape. I love that sound. Bzz. And underneath this plastic thing is all the wiring for the pickups and the knobs. And that's something you really don't want to mess around with unless you're really good at electronics and soldering irons and all that sort of thing. And that's a whole other skill. So I'd recommend that you leave this on. There's really no reason to take it off unless you're like a trained soldering iron electronics pickup guitar expert. So that should be fine. Just leave that on there and you'll be set to go. The next part of the guitar that I want to tell you about is the bridge. The bridge consists of a couple different parts. There's 6 individual saddles. They're called saddles, and each string comes out of each individual saddle. There's also 2 screws that adjust the height of the bridge, so you can change how high the strings are off the neck. If it's lower, a lot of times it's easier to play. If it's higher, a lot of times you get slightly better sound or a clearer sound. So you want to get a balance between those. There's also screws back here that will adjust the distance of the string, between where it starts off the bridge and the nut. It's a very fine and small adjustment, but it can help you stay in tune. It's also the sort of thing, for all these adjustments, you'd probably want to take it to a guitar repairman. They're going to know, how to make those fine adjustments and make your guitar set up perfectly. But chances are it came from the factory in good shape, and you really won't have to tweak it at all. So that's the bridge, and I would suggest, leave it alone. It's probably great, but if you have any problems, take it to a tech. Up in this part of the guitar is something called the truss rod. You can't see it because it's actually inside the neck. It's a piece of metal that runs all the way up and down, and it keeps your neck strong and it keeps it in the right position. It can be adjusted, and there's a little hole up here where you can put a tool in and turn it left or right. I would recommend leaving it alone because it does take some training to figure out which way to turn it and how to get it right. You shouldn't really have to mess with it because chances are the guitar is in perfect shape out of the box. If you feel something's wrong, then I would take it to a guitar tech at your local music store. He knows what to do and he can get it rocking for you. All right, I want to tell you how you can preserve the life of your strings. If you play guitar all the time, they tend to get rusty. They tend to get, just like the dirt from your fingers will get in them. And so we want to try to keep them clean. Best way to do that is after you're done playing, you can take a rag or a washcloth or a paper towel or anything and just wipe them off. That'll keep them dry, keep the sweat off of them. You can also grab each string individually and grab it all the way up and down the string, and that'll clean all the sweat and gunk off of there and keep your strings lasting a much longer time so you can keep playing a much longer time. The other thing you can do to keep your guitar in good shape is sometimes the fingerboard, if you play a lot, will get a little dirty or get some scum on there, and you can clean that off with, you can go to your guitar store and get some lemon oil or guitar cleaner, and that'll take it off. It'll also keep the wood on your fingerboard in good shape. It's not something you have to do a lot, but maybe once or twice a year, you can take the strings off and make sure your fretboard is nice and clean and playing and smelling good.